Hey, I'm Joe Connolly at WCBS News Radio, along with producer Neil A. Carousso. Let's eat. Today, we'll talk about the story of a popular New York based business that has grown a lot Smorgasburg, the open air food market and food festivals business that grew from its early phase at the famous Brooklyn Flea Market. Now, Smorgasburg is not only national, but international. I want you to meet the co founder, Eric Demby. Eric, I get the impression that you kept growing almost right through COVID. Is that right?
Yeah, we kind of did. We were up and running by about August of 2020. We pivoted, which was the word of the year, to a like a sort of, we called it Smorg to Go. We developed our own little online web ordering platform. Grubhub and Seamless got wind of it and gave us a little sponsorship to keep us alive, and people were ordering remotely and picking up their food, sort of like you do at like a Sweet Green kind of thing, at this lot where we do our flea market in Williamsburg, where the food vendors were set up every day. And we did that for the fall. We took over the old Chelsea Flea Market, the old one on 25th Street. It's been going for like 40 years. We took that over in 2020, and we opened that one Labor Day weekend of 2020. So yes, definitely
But
haven't stopped.
even you then pivoted to delivery as opposed to selling outside on the street to the people who were outside. Is that because there were no events to draw large numbers of people?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe we've all blocked it out to a certain extent, but yeah, we weren't. You couldn't have a gathering of more than what, like 10 people at some point. I don't even know if you could have a gathering of any kind in the summer of 2020. So, yeah, it wasn't even delivery. It was honestly just pickup. It was like you ordered it online and then you came over. So you were actually able to get a little bit of this kind of smorgasbord vibe of it. Like there were vendors there, you were interfacing with another human being. You weren't just getting your food in a bag to your house. It was a reason to leave the house. That was the thing. It was like actually something to do. Pick up your food, go across the street to where Smorgasburg actually happens, the state park, Marsha P. Johnson State Park, and have a picnic. And a lot of people did it actually. And so it was like a ersatz smorgasbord.
What advice do you have for business owners about growing fast? I mean, Smorgasburg is in Miami, Los Angeles, foreign cities. What advice do you have, Eric, on
Yeah.
managing fast growth?
My advice is actually, it's interesting. In your question, you said for growing fast. We actually have grown very gradually. Um, we've actually tried a lot of. One of the things I would say is that I'm not like one of these Silicon Valley people that believes so strongly in failure. I don't really like failure. I believe in launching in a way that everybody hears about what you're doing, and then if it doesn't work out, try to fail quietly. So nobody notices. We've had markets in Washington D.C. actually 2 different times, in Philadelphia, and we really love to try new things. Um, and we make a big splash when we do it. But then when it goes away, we love it when people don't notice. But the reality is that I really believe in having a core principles. You know what I mean, and understanding what it is that you're trying to do before you grow. I find that companies, small, large, whatever, they really just sort of feel like success is their goal. And I don't know that it's defined for them. I obviously know that capitalism and money drives people, and that's totally fine. We all need money. Things are expensive. But I feel like whether it's us as a market or the vendors themselves, individually, the really small businesses, they really have this passion and this drive to connect with people and to share their passion and their narrative. Every vendor has a little story, right? Sometimes it's a big story, and they want to share it with the world. They want to connect with people through food, and that's like, that's a guiding light. Sort of, what's your true north? Someone asked me last week, and it was very easy for me to answer that question for them in like 60 seconds. And I feel like that true north is really what you want to have, because then you're going to find yourself just talking about it incessantly to the rest of the world, if you're lucky, of course. And you really want to be caring about what you do and sharing that and that's what drives. That's what I for what we do. That's how we've been able to grow, right? And the speed at which you grow, I think, is actually fairly irrelevant. It's more important that you're achieving your goals.
That's a great answer. Neil, what questions have you cooked up for Eric?
Well, Joe, you mentioned the national expansion of Smorgasburg, and, you are also, Eric, expanding, I see, to Jersey City. So what's the reason behind that move and opening that new location in our area?
Yeah, so the Jersey City, where we actually reopened for the season on Saturday and had over 10,000 people. Saturday was the beautiful day. Sunday was the not beautiful day. Um, we are really mostly we're mostly responding to opportunities when we're offered new locations to do like a full smorgasburg as opposed to some sort of one-off event. And so in that scenario, we had Mac Cali, a big national. I think they might even be a global developer. I think they might have some public interest. I'm not really sure they're a big company. They have been working in the Harborside neighborhood of Jersey City, which is down by the water, close to where like Goldman is and the PATH train and that kind of thing. And so last year, they're making a big play down there. One of the people that used to work at the Barclays Arena with the Nets, when the Nets first started out, had gone to work for them. And, they were trying to, just like activate. So we're often working with real estate developers or sometimes public entities, as we are in one of the cities we're going to be opening in the summer, where we're invited. They want to activate a place where there's not as many people. They know there's going to be people usually in like 3 to 5 years, and they want to get it started sooner and we're sort of like a temporary tenant. And so with COVID and everything, also, I don't know, this is the weird nuance of COVID. In 2021, the governor of New Jersey was like slightly ahead of Cuomo in trying to like get stuff open, and we were able to to basically be allowed to reopen sooner there. And there was a lot of support there. New York was like in a very complicated, because New York suffered so much. New York was a little bit more cautious, I guess you could say.
And congestion too.
Yeah. And so we were able to get open there. And also what we found was that, even though Jersey City is like right there, right across the river, and it feels almost, there's almost, you could think there could be too much overlap with what we normally do. We found that not just Jersey City, but really the region of New Jersey was so full of, different communities, ethnic diversity, South Asian community, Filipino community, Jamaican and West Indian communities. And so that is really what drives the smorgasburg, right? Is when you have that variety of food that is real. It's not someone you just woke up and said, I want to make a Jamaican taco. It's like a person from Jamaica who, or has Jamaican heritage. And so when we found that in New Jersey, we I guess we leaned into that, and the response was so powerful, because that's really what drives us, as I was saying earlier. When we go to a place and there's that hunger among potential vendors to be part of the market, and the creativity is there, and really the talent pool in a way, it's sort of like any other company. When we see a talent pool that is limitless, we know we're going to do okay.
How many employees do you have to handle all of this, Eric?
It's not that many, and during COVID it was even fewer. We had some PPP and everything, but like we don't have a lot of full-time employees, to be perfectly honest with you. We probably now have maybe like a dozen year-round salaried employees between New York and Los Angeles, and Miami is a slightly different arrangement, but also a small team. So, and then we have a lot of seasonal employees, like day of folks who are working with us here in New York, April through October, and then in LA year round, like kind of day of just on Sunday.
Eric, you must be excited about the World Trade Center opening back up too, and full capacity this year. Those businesses that are there, you mentioned diversity in Jersey City. There's a wide diversity of businesses that come to the World Trade Center every year. People flock there downtown. Tell us about this summer, the season ahead, and also, out of curiosity, the businesses that are there, they must get so much brand awareness. And do you know how much attention they get from your Smorgasburg festivals? I mean, are they able to really bring people to their storefronts and market off of that?
Well, that's such an interesting question, because The brand awareness is a huge piece of why folks do it, right? When you're at that size of business and you're just starting out, to have anyone know about your business is really your biggest challenge, right? You can do it's like a tree falling in the forest. If you can have the most delicious food and there's no one there to try it, you're just making dinner at night for yourself, And so the big thing for them is that these are folks that are, they don't have access to capital in the way that someone who's opening a restaurant does in a major city. And it's not the kind of thing where you can just open a restaurant in New York, and unless you have, access to the high six figures, even for a small space, to fit it out and pay the rent and pay the minimum wage and all these things. It is not easy to have a restaurant in New York, not to mention the risk. At Smorgasburg, you're paying a little bit of rent. You can usually get in the door capex maybe 10 grand or less for your equipment, and you're one of the employees, and you're making money immediately. The first day of the market, you're putting cash in your pocket, and so it's all of those things together, which is when I was speaking before about my true north. I think for us, it's really being able to give folks that economic opportunity these days is incredibly important in a way for our economy. And then I think in Lower Manhattan, down by the World Trade Center, we've always, the only full year we've had there was 2019, and it was every time I would come out of the subway and show up at that market and see, One World Trade and the Oculus, and I lived in Manhattan when 9/11 happened, not far from there, honestly, and I every time, it's really sacred ground there, And so we always just felt so special being able to do anything at the World Trade Center. And so I think being part of this, unfortunately, sort of second revival of Lower Manhattan, and last year it was real sleepy down there. Lower Manhattan's stock and trade is office workers and tourists, both of which are still in short supply. And so to see it coming back, this past Friday on opening day, compared to where it was last year, is I was with the chairman of the Port Authority, Rick Cotton, on the opening day, and you can just sort of feel everyone. No one's fully breathing. No one's letting out all of their breath yet, right? But we're getting there. You can sort of feel that activity. People from all over the world that are a little bit lost. Tourists being confused. Like all those things are like, for a New Yorker, you're like, thank God.
Yeah. I always felt it was awe-inspiring to go down there and see, what has become of the World Trade Center site. It's really, quite breathtaking. One more quick question before we get back to Joe. The city must be thrilled to have you back. What is the economic output? Do you know an estimate of what the economic output is for New York City?
That's an interesting question. We try to quantify that as best we can all the time. But I think if you think about how many vendors there are and how much I think that they make on a given day, which I don't always know, and then you multiply it out by how many days we're open, I think you're definitely in the like tens of millions of dollars of economic activity.
Wow.
And I feel like whenever I run into any kind of like community trouble, I'm always having to recite these figures, which don't always have so much meaning, but it really has grown to be quite impactful. We also have these flea markets. We have a lot of, couple hundred small businesses that are part of the family just in New York, and now LA and Miami. And so I don't know. I am constantly pinching myself to still be around at all after COVID, because if you were to sit there in March of 2020 and think, oh, my income is based on events of more than 10,000 people, I was like, I think this might be it. And so to see 10,000 people come to Jersey City this past Saturday was really everything for us.
Eric, did I understand you to say that you closed down a couple of operations in Washington and other places because they weren't working out as you had hoped for you?
Short answer, yeah. What we found is that in I don't like to call them smaller cities, but if you're not a mega city like New York or LA or Miami, with a lot of tourists as well, right? It's really hard to sustain a weekly market with at least 40 vendors on a weekly basis throughout the year. In DC specifically, I underestimated the power of the humidity and the heat. It was really swampy there in the summer and just unbearable to be at a market. And in Philly, we were really, Philly, we tried in like 2011, so we were too young, and we called it Brooklyn Flea Philly, because we thought Brooklyn Flea was all that, and I was like, what a huge mistake in hindsight to like, especially for Philadelphia, who, because people are like, Philadelphia is like the 6th borough, and then you get there and they're like, we want nothing to do with you.
Much different
hate
city.
being compared to New York, you know what I mean? So it was like, we were doomed from the start down there, but we always have great launches of these things. We get a ton of press in the local paper and TV, and a lot of people will come the first 2 or 3 weeks. But without a really big media market and visitors to the city, and frankly, just like well over 2 billion people, sustaining it is hard.
But you restarted. I mean, you reopened in some of those places that you mentioned where you closed. You figured it out and did it better, right?
That's exactly right. So what I learned is that, so we did a flea market in Philly, we did a flea market in DC, and then we came back to DC with a Smorgasburg. But what we really learned, and I'll be honest with you, part of it is the population and the size of the city. But what we really learned from doing LA in 2015, when we launched it in 2016, but between 2015 and 16, when we were getting going there, I was going there myself a week a month. I hired a guy, and what we did is we built a community. We talked to everyone we know. We let people know what we were doing. We touched different parts of the city. We made sure that we were building an inclusive community, that felt like it really reflected all of LA, which is, not easy to do. And we were relentless in sort of like getting buy-in. So LA felt like it was its market. It was not a transplanted market. It was all vendors from LA. It was an LA thing, and now 6 years later, a lot of people that go to the Smorgasburg in LA, which is huge, it's like 10 to 12,000 people a day. And it's like, gets so much press. I'm actually envious of it from New York at this point. A lot of people go to that market, and then, my manager will introduce me to his friends, and they'll be like, oh, there's a Smorgasburg in New York too. And I'm always like, that's success, So
there you go.
That was the lesson. But what we learned is that it's a lot of work. You can't just ride in your coattails and say, oh, everyone's so excited for Smorgasburg, they'll just show up. Like, you really need to, build a community around what we're doing.
Well, thank you for your insights. And Eric has been at a terminal type of a place, so you can hear some noises behind him. But thank you for your insights and sharing your experience. And also thank you for all of the businesses that you have helped start. As you said at the beginning, some of these businesses have a little story behind them. Some of them have a big story behind them of somebody's dream. And you've given them their start. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate being on.